this thing with diversity and inclusion is always difficult. I started using Linux in the late 90s. I had a friend in a class, and we bought like a CD set, and then we burned it. And I think that he was a little bit more tech savvy than what I was, and I think he went with Slackware and I went with Red Hat. Then at that time I was not part of the Linux community, though in 2001 and 2002 I was unemployed. So then I had as a hobby to build a small Linux cluster I used PVM, and then I was like on a Beowulf mailing list. I won't say if that was to be a part of the Linux community or not, but that I did. And then let's forward on to the present, or where my neurodiversity story starts. I was in a school where let's say, I won't name the school, but let's just say that these students had a problem with people being different, and also teachers not to their liking. And it happened to neurotypical teachers also, that if they didn't like a person, they would go and complain. And that was when I hit the wall. And then I started to think about, is it good to disclose a diagnosis or not? And it has caused me, this was roughly 6 years ago, and it has caused me both pros and cons. But that's when to the present, when my neurodiversity journey, or thoughts to be open or not in a diagnosis, was considered. And then I've had many problems with Swedish authorities in the year 2017 and on. So that was also a thing. But then I started to thinking about IT, and it's a good thing. Actually, SAP, it's a German software company that does business systems. They had a neurodiversity program as early as 2014. But then there's the problem that they only look for top programmers, and I'm not a top programmer. I would be able to teach a high school class or a basic college level class on how to program Java 101 or C 101 or things like that. And that's also what's one of the other reasons I hit the wall, that I'm not very good at web programming. So for me, I think accommodations of like a cognitive kind, to have work that I can do, and perhaps a slower working pace, or working less hours than full-time, are good accommodations. And some people might need no accommodations on the spectrum. So all people are different. And in the EU, in Sweden, the Swedish Public Employment Office can pay an employer for accommodations. I know that there are such systems also in other European countries, but that is something. And there's something also called the European Social Fund, where one can seek money for such a things like accommodation. But then I don't know what's the US and what's the Czech and so on. But and to finish off my talk then. And then I wrote this article on neurodiversity, and I'm happy to for the reception. And I also think it's this thing with accessibility that I've also talked with Paul. If other community members of the Linux community want to contribute to the work of making Linux more accessible, that would also be interesting to me and other neurodiverse people. So thanks for letting me join.
I have a follow-up.
Yeah, sure.
So what has your experience so far in the Fedora community been like in regards to some of the issues and topics that you were talking about?
No, I think it's been good. And I also really like that it's welcoming, and that you invite people, and that the other session was also good. And I also had, it was also nice that we talked in Guadix. So my experience has been very